This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I'd like to welcome to the show today, Noling Del Campo.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. I got really excited doing this episode this last week. When I was doing the research, I realized we have finally caught up to the time frame in which Dennis Kaufman is starting to figure out that Jack is Zodiac. And a few very odd, or should I say coincidental, things occurred at that same time as I was putting it together, which really kind of flooded my body with goosebumps and made me almost want to fall off the chair. So I want to start by bringing up the PowerPoint presentation and share some of my signs with everyone. Okay, so basically 222 has been a number of mine for quite some time. It represents balance and harmony. It's an angel number. I don't throw a lot of belief into these things, but it was something that I was seeing quite frequently and eventually had tattooed on my foot. We can see that down here. So one of the things that occurred that sent goosebumps up my spine was the fact that when I was making the album cover for this particular episode, it is episode number 222. And that 222 font that is found in this particular album cover is exactly the font that was used for the twos in my tattoo. So at first that was like just a odd coincidence, or obviously I like this form, I suppose, because the font for the presentation has been set since 2013. And the 222 I probably got somewhere around 2022 or 2023. So vast difference between the time frame in which these fonts were chosen.
What album cover do you refer to?
This one right here. So it says episode 222.
Oh, okay.
And those twos are the style of twos I had done. This is the crappiest tattoo I own. And of course, the guy who did it blundered it, and basically scarred my foot pretty bad doing it. Either way, I still love it. It still represents the 222 fashion. And to know that episode 222, we're going to be introducing the research, and when Dennis begins to figure out that he believes Jack is the Zodiac. Aside from that, as I'm doing... What's that?
It looks like a cross between a cobra and an Egyptian cat. The head.
Well, it's supposed to be a heart around it. And again, he ran 1-2 up into one corner, so you can't really differentiate it from the others. I know what it is, and that's what matters to me. Okay. But so that not being planned was kind of a shocker. And also while I was typing in the date, so I'm trying to be vigilant about when these episodes air, and I typed in the date 3/20/26. And as I was typing that date in, I looked down at the clock on the computer and it actually said 3:26 p.m. I was like, okay. There's my note. There's my sign. Anyways, I did have at least one person reach out in regards to the last show that aired where we were talking about the Iron Dome, and it's at DubstepKid801. And it says, the Iron Dome is advanced missile defense system that is very good because the enemies of Israel will launch rockets into Israel and basically launches a counter rocket to intercept. And it's really, really good and can defend against quite a bit of incoming missiles. It says we are giving them a lot of aid and the relationship between us is basically unbreakable. And I'm not 100% sure why. And that level of unity is actually hidden for the most part. I presume it has something to do with World War II. My response obviously is ding, 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 ding. I think you nailed it with your past statement. I feel that World War II was its own agenda to give them access to the U.S., and there it all begins. So I feel like, do they have pictures on naked presidents? Do they have the inside information in regards to what really went down in World War II that they are withholding from the rest of Americans and the rest of the world? There's something going on there if we're going to keep giving them money, making sure they're safe. And for gosh sakes, if they have the Iron Dome, I would assume we do as well too, right?
Who has it? Israel?
Israel, yes.
Okay.
So he's saying he doesn't understand why we keep doing what we do for these people. And of course, I have those same questions, and I think most of America should as well. Anyway.
Just on the Israel issue real briefly, in the Sacramento Bee today, there was an article about the Assistant Secretary of, I forget what, it was defense-related governmental entity, but they resigned because of Trump's invasion of Iran and his support for Israel, saying that Israel goaded Trump into doing this. And that's why none of the Europeans are supporting this effort. They don't want to jump in. They say that's between you and Israel. We're not going to split it, they're saying, but they're not going to help.
And they keep saying that the Democrats are all for Israel and foreign funding and all of these things. But I also like to include that Trump is former Democrat. Just because he plays a Republican president doesn't mean that his agendas doesn't align with all of the politicians.
Oh, and
right?
Now he's also talking about invading Cuba.
Well, it's like a repeat of history all over again. And yay, Venezuela, they won the baseball. How did they win the World Series, right? Right after we stole their president. I just don't even understand. Whatever.
Viva Venezuela!
Well, we left off in late 1999 with Jack last week, so we're kind of just following him around at this point. He's a loose cannon running around. Nora has passed away. He does not have that responsibility anymore. And so we seen him go to Arizona, and then there was talk about him moving to at least Stephen Dewhurst's book said he went to Texas, but Dennis said he went to Oregon. And I have some proof here that he was actually in Oregon for a short period. So on November 18th of 1999, per Dewhurst's book, Jack received a speeding ticket in Snowflake, Arizona, which is 100 miles east of Flagstaff near Springerville, where Nora, I can't talk now, Nora had family. So there is an indication that he is moving east from Arizona, which may be putting him back into Texas as Dewhurst has thought. But in 1999, we also show that Jack is in Oregon, and at least till the mid-2000s. Then he returns to Austin, Texas. So he may have made a short trip between Arizona and Oregon to Texas, but ultimately went back to Texas after Oregon. And I showed that this fax receipt here is a fax paper, in which case Jack is sending a request for a pharmacist for some medications. And Ancestry.com actually shows that Jack Tarrance owned a P.O. box in Eugene, Oregon from January 1st of 2000 to September 3rd of 2004. Now, I don't know if he just pays for them for blocks at a time, so maybe he pays 4 years in advance, or why he would continue to keep something like that since he literally left the area shortly after. But when I was looking at this fax page here and the consideration that the Tom Voigt letters were recognized by Charles, Jack's son, as being Jack's handwriting, I noticed a lot of consistencies inside of this fax page that were comparative not only to the Zodiac, but the Dear Dashboard letters, to things as far back as Black Dahlia. And then I started plotting out some of the different things I was seeing inside the Tom Voigt letters. So I've placed them here around it. And one of them is this angular first hump or bottom of the W. The bottom U shape of the W. The first one is angular, and then it leans. The midsection and the right section actually leans to the right with a curvature that occurs at the top of the right hand side of the W. And I blew up this word when, and that's from Jack's handwriting. So I
looks like cursive a little bit. It's slanted like cursive, and it's almost, when you first glance at it, you think it's cursive, but it's actually printing, correct?
But it's more like a print connect. So he's using a script type feature, like with this word, the word with, we can see that the T bar actually extends up into the H and comes back down. I have the with somewhere else. This is actually inside of the Tom Voigt letter, but I was more or less pointing out these W's. I took a look at the letter H over here from the word when with Jack, and those H's are formed and shaped pretty much near identical to what Jack writes like, and this is out of Tom Voigt's letters. All of these P's.
It's an elongated H.
Very tall stems, and that's what I noted in the Tom Voigt letters were these very tall stems, and we know that Jack had them. Tall stems and and long lower extenders, as in the word computer with this P right here and this very angular bowl. We can see that that was something that was clearly used throughout the progression of these letters, including this double stroke open bottom end of the P that has this pointed bottom portion. And so some of these characteristics being pointed out are things that he probably thought he was concealing, but clearly they're still within the wheel well. And even if he thought he was disguising his handwriting, he's still using forms that he uses because that's how the brain works. So this actually was done on February 10th of 2000. He's faxing the pharmacy from an Oregon number. So that's how I know he's in Oregon, because the fax number on it is in Oregon. All right. And now we are into the beginning of Dennis starting to figure things out. And Dennis watches the America's Most Wanted feature on the Zodiac Killer and with John Walsh. And he comments to Rick, who is Mary's husband. And now Mary is Nora's daughter, but Dennis comments to Rick that the composite matches Jack. And of course, this is from Dennis's book that he wrote in, I believe, 2008, before I ever even met him. It says, June of 2000, I left Lacey, Washington to head back home to Eugene, Oregon. When I got back, I told Joy that I think Jack might be the Zodiac Killer. She asked me if I had smoked my breakfast. I told her that I was serious and briefly, I know. I said, there's some of these things that he puts in the book is just great. He says, she asked me, I told her that I was serious and briefly explained what led me to believe this. After hearing the reason, she thought it was a good possibility that he could be Zodiac. I knew that I couldn't do much as far as investigate living in Eugene, Oregon, because everything that I needed was in California. About 2 weeks later, so if Dennis, I didn't read this before the facts. If Dennis is the one that's in Oregon, that's why Jack is there. With Charles, probably trying to hop around, I'm guessing, and find a place to be. But if he's in Eugene, Oregon, then that's why Jack probably went there, because everything I needed was in California. About 2 weeks later, we were packed up and headed to Sacramento. The first person I wanted to talk to was Gary, Jack's nephew. Gary did not like his Uncle Jack, so he would be willing to help me. And I believe Gary has reached out to me, even though he's made some comments via the YouTube channel. He's not really reached out and spoke to me personally, but I wish he would if he hears this. Says the next day after arriving in Sacramento, we went to see Gary. I told him that I thought his Uncle Jack was the Zodiac Killer. I asked Gary if he was around Jack in the late 60s, and he said that he was. Gary said him and Jack were driving in or around Oakland when Jack saw a black man walking and decided to run him over for no apparent reason. I told Gary to just think about it and I will stop by tomorrow. The next day, Gary looked like he had had a rough night. He looked at me and he said, "It's him." He was up all night reading about Zodiac on the internet. Joy and I started reading everything we could about the Zodiac Killer. The more information we had, the more accurate we would be in determining whether Jack was Zodiac or not. Gary mentioned that Jack had converted an old school bus into a motorhome in the late 60s. This is the bus, I believe, that his brother-in-law and sister owned, that they were busted in 1963 with an illegal gambling. They'd taken a bunch of people up the hill in this bus and were gambling on it, and then set up, I think, one of Jack's brothers to come in and act like he was going to rob the bus, and they got busted because the people on the bus overtook those that were running the gambling operation.
Oh, wow.
And so I think that bus was then eventually, it became Jack's at some point. I asked Gary what type of gun Jack had back then, and the one pistol that he remembered was a .45 caliber. He also remembered hearing Jack and his son Barry talking about this girl they had picked up hitchhiking. They picked her up in a truck and camper and had pulled off the road somewhere and took her into the camper and raped her. This made me wonder if Barry knew who his dad was or maybe even helped. Barry died in 1981. Jack does have another biological son named Dennis, and he is still living. When I briefly mentioned the possibility of his dad being the Zodiac, his reaction led me to believe that he may know who his dad is, or at least that he has committed murder. I remember reading a letter that Dennis sent his dad. Now you got to remember there's two Dennises here. We have Denny and we have Dennis, and Dennis is the biological son of Jack. Or I'm sorry, Denny is the biological son of Jack, but he's calling him Dennis in this book because that is his name. But that's how they differentiated each other from one another. Dennis Kaufman was Dennis, and Dennis Tarrance was Denny.
Was Denny the one that was in the military?
Yes, and we're going to get to that right here.
Yeah, I suspect him of being an accomplice.
Yeah. I remember reading a letter that Denny sent his dad while he was in Vietnam. I don't remember the whole letter word for word, but I remember the last part of it very well. Denny ended his letter to his dad, Jack, with, "Dad, I killed 16 gooks today, and you would have loved it here because hunting season is open all year."
Wow.
This statement, right?
That's like a reference to The Most Dangerous Game.
Exactly. This statement that Denny made in his letter to his dad establishes that Denny knows his dad likes to hunt. Denny clearly stated that he had killed 16 people that day. This clearly establishes that humans are being hunted. This indicates to me that Denny knew his dad liked killing people. That's why he said his dad would love it there.
Love it.
Because you can kill people all year long. That's just disgusting. Wow, but it is what it is. Oh,
apple didn't fall too far from the tree
at all. And so Dennis reports this to the FBI and the SFPD. And during this time, Dennis turns over Jack's DNA for testing, but it's botched by SFPD in, I want to say 2000, in a pooling error, as they called it. They claimed to have ended up with two different DNA samples, and Dennis believed it was because they pooled the sample from under the actual lip of the envelope and from under the stamp, when in reality, when Dennis thinks back about the spittoon Jack had and how he would have everybody spit in it, and then he would use that spit in that spittoon to seal any of his letters or to wet his it just makes me sick to think about this, but
gross.
It's totally gross. So it's possible the dual sample or the dual DNA sample was because of how Jack also sealed these particular envelopes. And unbeknownst to SFPD, they would not have known something like that.
Or it was more incompetence by the SFPD.
Well, and there was this huge thing going on in the early 2000s, which Gerald Brown, our former governor, had to out the SFPD because the lab department was busted for not only using drugs, but stealing drugs from evidence, falsifying tests, which means that they also could have been told to come out with a negative on this on this particular exam for Jack, because SFPD has been so negative towards Dennis from day one when he came with this information. SFPD was just round filing it. They weren't responsive to the FBI. They weren't trying to help Sonoma County Sheriff's Department do the palm print examination or fingerprint examination. They were doing whatever they could to stall and elongate the time frames in which they should have really gotten on it and handled it, especially after the way they treated Deborah Perez, who was totally a false suspect, and they gave her hundreds of hours of investigative time.
That's crazy. Yeah. It's funny because I do a lot of reading on books involving various police departments in big cities. And the way it works is usually the higher ranking the officers are, the more likely they are to be corrupt.
Right. Yeah, you have to play the politics, and that means that you'll give passes.
Or just doing their job most of the time.
Yeah. Well, and the only way you make it that way, they say, is playing the politics. Now, to play the politics means that you have to buddy up, handshake agreements, let people off of things, falsify information for them, or at least not tell on somebody when they do. That's the politics of getting higher up. Well, it's kind of like that mayor that we talked about in New York who said, or the attorney in New York who said he wasn't going to run for mayor because he knows that they would have killed him because he would have been honest. He would have not done the handshake deals behind the back, right?
Yeah, I could relate to that.
So, per Dennis's book, in mid-2000, Jack moves with Charles back to Austin, Texas. So I started seeing more unsolved murders. But in September 2nd of 2000, 36 years of age, Angela and Dominic Hudson out of Conroe, Texas. We see a lot of unsolved murders for Conroe, Texas. Is a missing person, and the DNA identifies, I guess, remains that have been found. So released from Montgomery County Jail on 9/2/2000. September 9th of 2000, family reported her missing. And then on January 14th, 2001, ATV rider finds skeletal remains on a wooded lot at the corner of McCaleb Road and FM 2854 in Montgomery, Texas. So we're starting to see the murders pick up. And this is no different than Jack moving to Arizona for that split second that he did in the triple homicide that occurred 13 minutes away. This one is just kind of reliving because we're going to climb into the Voinovich case. And this is another senator whose daughter is killed while they are camping or campaigning. Wow. Not camping. Campaigning. Yeah. Well, and this is the second senator that we've seen this happen to. Well, while campaigning, their child was killed. So it says Cleveland, the 9-year-old daughter of Lieutenant Governor George Voinovich was killed in a traffic accident shortly after noon yesterday. Euclid General Hospital spokeswoman Marilyn Deblicker said the victim was positively identified as Molly Voinovich at the hospital after being pronounced dead on arrival at 12:55 p.m. Cleveland police said that the child was struck by a van at about 12:30 at the intersection of East 179th and Shenley Streets in the northeast portion of Cleveland. She reportedly was walking home from Oliver Hazard School and was crossing a street protected by a crossing guard when the accident occurred. Details of the accident remained unclear. And that to me is just odd. You've got a crossing guard in the crosswalk and a van blows through and kills the potential senator's daughter, because mind you, he's the mayor or governor, lieutenant governor at this point.
Okay.
Details of the accident remained unclear. Police said the driver, a 19-year-old Cleveland area resident, stopped at the scene. He is being held while the investigation is being completed, police said. The accident occurred about 6 blocks from the What's that?
What about the guy doing traffic? He's supposed to be watching out for these kids.
Yeah. He's supposed to be the one making sure that nobody blasts through, and he's supposed to guard them. Stop.
Right. He's supposed to step out with a big stop sign.
Exactly.
Once you're in the crosswalk, yeah.
Well, it goes on to say that Voinovich is a Republican candidate for mayor in Cleveland. Government James Rhodes said from his Columbus office, the death of 9-year-old Molly Voinovich was a numbing shock to all of us who have become so close to the Voinovich family in the past 2 years. Public service is a family affair with the Voinoviches, and Molly, along with her brothers and sisters, spent the summer of 1978 campaigning all over Ohio with their father. Her bright spirit and love for her parents made her a great young campaigner. He added, the unexplainable and untimely loss of their child will be a crushing blow to George and Janet, and I pray their strong religious faith will sustain them in the dark hours they are now experiencing, Rhodes said, adding his sympathy and condolences to the entire family. Mayor Dennis Kucinich, who is running against Voinovich in the November 6th election, said he and his wife are shocked and deeply saddened by this tragedy. Our deepest sympathies go out to the entire Voinovich family. Kucinich also said he is canceling all his scheduled campaign appearances for an indefinite time. And a little bit more I read in Wikipedia is on October 8th of 1979, a few days after the primary, Voinovich's 9-year-old daughter, Molly, was struck by a van and killed. The event brought the Voinovich campaign to a virtual halt and made it difficult for Kucinich to attack his opponent. Still, he challenged Voinovich to a series of debates in various Cleveland neighborhoods. Voinovich declined the invitation, saying the debates would be unproductive, but they did debate on November 3rd at the City Club. Voinovich won the election with 94,541 votes to Kucinich's 73,755 votes. So to me, the agenda just screams out loud. Wow. Well, yeah, I bet they thought that this would stop Voinovich in his tracks, and it didn't. And just like the other senator who lost his job,
if it was on purpose.
Yeah, because there's now going to be all this empathy for Voinovich from the masses based on him staying strong, continuing to move forward in his political campaign, even though he had lost his daughter. And I don't know many people who could do that. I'm sorry. My political campaign would not override my ability to want to be with my family during these times. You couldn't pay me enough.
It's odd. It's almost like selling your soul to the devil, giving up your one child.
And the reason why that I even bring this past up from 1979 is because it plays right on into this propaganda and these agendas that we see happening, because Voinovich eventually receives a letter which is very, very much Zodiac-like. So strange happenings. Let's see, updates, swindle. Okay. So basically this thinking of you sticker and have a nice day sticker evidently were Valentine's Day stickers that were included in, I believe, the Halloween card from the Zodiac. Now, when we look at this letter that we're going to talk about, it's very reminiscent of these two particular stickers, which there is a theory that these stickers were taken from a box of chocolates, Valentine chocolates, that were left on a wall at the scene of the Swindles murder way back in the 1960s or earlier, maybe even.
Down in Southern California?
Yes. And it was the long shooter 22 long rifle bullets, like all the similarities, and possibly the watch that was missing from Mr. Swindle that may potentially have been the clue left at the Sherry Jo Bates crime scene. So it's these crossover connections between these pieces of evidence that make them compelling. So I love this
name. Leroy Jethro Gibbs. Those are the names of my sons.
That's NCIS.
Leroy Jethro Gibbs. And Cephas, the fourth one.
Right. That Leroy Jethro Gibbs is the lead investigator on NCIS, and I love his rules. And his rule number 39: there are no such things as coincidences.
Okay.
So, I did bring up an article, and this is regards to the San Diego. A newlyweds couple stroll along a picturesque stretch of beach ended in horror when a sniper's bullet cut them down from behind. And the excerpt on this is: on a ledge of the retaining wall, police found a box of Valentine candy. Police assumed the Swindles bought the candy while on their stroll, but they said it could have been left behind as a deranged killings calling card. I think they nailed it. This is a very, very old article. Calling card. So this is the actual greeting card to Voinovich in December of 2000. And we can see once again the thinking of you type thing. Wow. So it says, I'm sending this as 4 separate faxes, but the only way, I think this is actually notation from the person who's sending it, and date of transcription is 1/2/2001. Attached photographic copy of the threatening communication received by the Voinoviches, and on December 20th, 2000, in which the unknown writer threatens the life of U.S. Senator George V. Voinovich. Wow. This is the inside right page. Due to the way my scanning software and fax software work, the top line of each page is cut off. The top line on the inside of the left page says, "Hey, you stinking white bitch." The top line on this page says, "We don't want no TV bullshit," which is funny because as far as the Zodiac's concerned, he loves TV bullshit. Yeah. It threatens the U.S. Senator, uses racial remarks, which is very consistent with the Atlanta, Georgia child killer. This author is often writing about the real story, needs to be told, or he's saying, want no Tom Voight TV BS. This is after the 2000 airing of John Walsh's America's Most Wanted on the Zodiac with Tom Voight. And I laughed. So the December 20th, 2000 greeting card, and I don't think there's anything. This was actually, I believe, found on zodiacciphers.com, and it refers to this particular letter. It says a business reply envelope postmarked Cleveland, Ohio, March 2nd, 1981, bearing the press printed address, the Danbury Mint, Richards Avenue, P.O. Box 5260, Norwalk, Connecticut, contained the message, please stop force busing or I will kill 3 more black boys in Atlanta in March. So here's that cross connection between, yes, Atlanta, Georgia, and this particular communication. 6 days later, a letter claiming to be from the Zodiac Killer arrived at the television station WXIA TV 11 Alive at 1611 West Peach Street, Atlanta 30308 on March 8th of 1981, stating, hello, it's me. Haven't you people figured out who's killing these little people yet? I therefore went in search of other communications from these postmark locations that bore any similarity to the Zodiac Killer. The following find is extremely unlikely to have any connection to the Bay Area murderer, but it was a threatening greeting card that carried the same message, apparently included with the Zodiac Killer's October 27th, 1970 Halloween card. The arrival date carries some significance. The card was postmarked just 22 days before the 2001 Happy New Year Zodiac greeting card, which was mailed to the San Francisco Chronicle on January 10th of 2001, and it was postmarked from Cleveland, Ohio, just like the March 2nd, 1981 letter above. Very interesting coincidences. Let's see. I don't know if I've seen, the Happy New Year card. I wonder if they're referring to the... I'm not sure if I know which one that was, unless they're referring to the Groucho Marx Christmas card. Either way, it was a threatening communication cut into 4 pieces and mailed to the Republican headquarters, 526 Superior Avenue, Northeast, Cleveland, Ohio, on December 19th, 2000, to U.S. Senator George Voinovich, and received on December 20th, 2000. 2 stickers apparently came with the Zodiac Halloween card in 1970 with the messages, thinking of you and have a nice day. This greeting card, adorned with an image of flowers, also came with the message, thinking of you. 3 parts of the handwritten threat stated, hey, you stinking white bitch, we don't want no TV bullshit, and we will cut off your head and impale it on a spear. The envelope bore a zip code of 44126-1906 and a 33-cent upside-down General Omar North Bradley stamp. So now we have the placement of the stamp that is also similar with the Zodiac Killer, who would turn his stamps upside down in his mailings.
Wow.
So we have the postmark of Cleveland, Ohio, and then he's talking about those bastard Muni Drive, the majority Black and Asians, what happened to the white people drivers we once had. So again, a very racist remark. Voinovich opposed lowering tax rates. He frequently joined Democrats on tax issues, and in 2000 was the only Republican in Congress to vote against a bill providing for relief from the marriage penalty. Ooh, he's making some people mad, I'm guessing. Yeah. In previous suspected Zodiac communications, the author had targeted many notable Democrats, so the fact Senator Voinovich frequently joined the views. However, it must be stressed that this greeting card was unlikely to have been mailed by the Zodiac Killer, despite some of the overlapping features. I don't think, when I compare the handwriting, I don't feel like that this is unlikely at all. So in the 2005 Tim Miller letter, we also see racist remarks about who he killed, all the ones who are white and look enough like her. And then no Mexican, no yellow, and I'm assuming he's meaning Chinese. So we're seeing that same hate rhetoric. So I kind of cross-reference Voinovich, Republican who votes Democrat. There's threats. We've got Nixon, who's a Republican, and messages to Nixon and RFK. FBI and Hoover calls him out as being incompetent. The CIA, mob and political affiliation. Hearst, Democrat El Jefe of media, uses his UPI system to get messages out. In the JFK, the Democrat telling on those involved. Hillary, a Democrat that was Republican when she was a young attorney on the Watergate case. Mob controlled both parties. I mentioned earlier another congressman, and we already talked about that had also lost his Oh no, this one was mentioned earlier. A congressman that wasn't voted into office taking a Republican spot was a Democrat and voted as a Democrat, turning the House votes. So we're seeing this flip-flopping back and forth of political parties.
Interesting.
Similar complaints as the greeting card sent to Senator Voinovich, who lost his daughter during a primary run for office. We can see this is the letter here that we're going to be talking about. It is made out to Mr. Editor, something the Zodiac would say. Dear sir, whoever you are, this just disgusting to read what seems to be a news that nobody really cares, but the relatives of innocent citizens murder in our beloved San Francisco. So this is being mailed talking about San Francisco.
That looks like Jack's writing.
I'm telling you, like when I do the comparisons of these things, and here we have all the Belltop A's that I believe once existed in the Zodiac communications that we have seen probably removed over the years as the images made the internet. But so it says it's always the, oh man, that's a hard one to read. The pedimist's fault, never the bastard Muni drive, the majority black and Asian. What happened with the white people drivers we once had? Are they all retard on welfare or at Laguna Honda? I don't know what any of that means, but from now on, there will be a Muni driver executed for every citizen murdered in the streets of San Francisco. You thought I was dead. No way. This is, I'm saying, yeah, this is, I'm saying that. So basically, it goes on a little bit more about the communication, and it says, let's see here. The 2000 greeting card was postmarked 22. Oh, I already read that. To find the reason Senator George Voinovich was targeted, we have to look at his timeline on Wikipedia, where it states, in the Senate, Voinovich opposed lowering taxes. He frequently joined Democrats on tax issues. I just read that in these other, yeah, okay, I'm not going to go back through that again. Now, here's a direct comparison between a 1986 letter from the Zodiac, which was validated as a Zodiac communication by Tarrance Pascal, former document examiner who worked on the actual Zodiac case back in the day. And here is the envelope to the letter that we're talking about right now that was sent to not only, I mean, this is actually then, it's coming out of San Francisco on the 10th of January, and it's mailed to the San Francisco Chronicle. So we're seeing a combination of these working their way back and forth. So this one follows the Voinovich letter that was mailed late December of 1999 and then in 2001. Now you have to keep in mind that I'm not exactly sure what date Dennis confronts Jack with the information. We know that Dennis knows in 2000, but at some point in time in 2001, Dennis is letting Jack know that nobody's taking him seriously and they don't believe Jack is the Zodiac. And I think that's where we start to see the communications ramp up again. This one here in 2001, we're going to see some more for 2001, including the anthrax letters. But there were a lot of things in this particular arrangement on this envelope that was very consistent, including the use of the additional 4 numbers in the zip code. We're going to see this happen in the 9/11 anthrax, or not 9/11, I think it was 9/18, but that whole 9/11 2001 experience that occurred for that week and a half or so. We're going to see him using those the last 4 digits of the zip code as well. And I put all of these pieces together at the very end of this presentation where I show all the consistencies between all the communications and how they cross over. So we'll look at that at another time. But the information and the way everything is done is pretty much Zodiac 101.
I have a couple of observations. First of all, the stamp on the one, it's a little bit askew, which is Zodiac, and then the writing on the right looks like Jack's writing. Writing on the left looks like maybe Jack trying to disguise his writing.
Yes, and he understands how to disguise his handwriting, and all you really need to do, based on the forefathers, you got to remember at this point in time, early 2000s, we haven't even had an established credibility as this being a scientific science that we can testify to in court until 2008. Up until that point, our forefathers indicated one significant difference in handwriting precludes us from identifying somebody as the author. So all he needed to do was change and correctly keep the change of one letter throughout that entire communication. And that would have prevented most document examiners from coming to a conclusion, but not I. I mean, I clearly can look past that, especially when we're dealing with anonymous communications. If the person is very well educated in the art of handwriting identification, as I believe the Zodiac was, he mentioned it in his letters. It was mentioned in the Scorpion ciphers to John Walsh. And then we see, you know, these subtle differences. But the other things that are very big is look at this M in mission. And look at the M in mission over here.
Quite similar.
And in this one, this is actually one of Jack's true N's. True N, bell top A's. So he used some of his very consistent and known letters, but he changed things like the letter T. He turned into capital T's on this, right?
Yeah.
Instead of lowercase t's like they should be. So he changes one letter. And then that's supposed to preclude an identification of authorship, which I don't technically buy. But
I don't think you can get away from slanting some of his letters.
Well, the rightward slant is a normal, considering we're taught to write rightward, and that creates, especially if you're using speed and cursive writing, that lean will be a little more prevalent.
Cursive, but in printing, you know, a lot of it's just straight up and down.
It should be, you'd think. But not everybody's straight up and down. That's the way we're taught. It's how we deviate that makes us able to identify who the author is.
I guess we agree on that.
So, yes. So in the municipal light, some of the information that I found interesting off of Wikipedia, or maybe this is Wikipedia. It says, as they persisted in making efforts to buy out Muni Light and pressuring Voinovich into giving them the right to do so, Voinovich resisted. Early in his tenure, he arranged for capital improvements to strengthen Muni Light's operation, and by 1982, it was able to compete with CEI. He asserted that the company was making attempts to cripple Muni Light by lobbying council against much-needed legislation. We still have a battle going on, Voinovich said. It says the rebuilding process began through Voinovich's administration, and improvements were made throughout the company, including equipment upgrades and increased wages for all employees. To reflect all the change, Municipal Light officially changed its name to Cleveland Public Power. So this is just throwing it back into the power realm. And we know that General Electric is a big, huge thing in Jack's life. And in some of these instances where, such as John Benet Ramsey's company was purchased by General Electric for pennies on the dollar after they demised his reputation. So the power struggle is real. And I'm not sure which message board I took this off of, but it says by Rubislaw 32. This is a nice find, Richard. And at this early stage of examination, it is perhaps accepted that proof of a Zodiac link might be difficult, but very persuasive reasons that there may be. The Danbury Mint link of 1981 suggests that the Zodiac had visited that address prior. Given a perception that the Zodiac took a keen interest in collecting miniatures, the stamp collecting, model making, and even numismatics as possible hobbies, as well as astronomy and a following of the space race. All of that describes the Zodiac, and Jack, for this matter. He goes on to say that let's see, sugary coated sarcasm, thinking of you, divorce settlement, break. Oh, so I thought was interesting is that the person mentions the reason that this author might have been triggered was a divorce settlement, a breakdown of a marriage, then viewed as a business arrangement to be mixed, is quite likely to bring out the worst of someone who is likely to blame anyone else but themselves. So we had Nora just die, right? So all of a sudden, Jack goes from being very busy with her and her health to nothing on his hands and mad again, if you will. And then Dennis stumbling onto the fact that he believes that he is the Zodiac. So knowing that Jack was purportedly moved back to Texas, we see another set of murders come across. January 20th of 2001, unidentified skeletal remains, approximately 50 years of age, white or Hispanic male, at the 10,000 block of Bilnoski Road, Willis, Texas. Citizen operating bulldozer in a partially wooded area and unearthed dentures. Further investigation uncovered skeletal remains. Dentures bore the name Eaton and the number 330841, which may have been given through the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. I don't know. I didn't know we paid for dentures, but evidently it looks like in corrections, they were doing this. So interesting that this was somebody who came out of prison, obviously, because he has dentures that can be identified. But I also thought it was interesting that Eaton happened to be the name of these dentures, since Eaton bond paper was used in the Zodiac stuff. So I just threw it in there. February 1st of 2001, 27-year-old John David McGoldrick, 8,000 block of South Williams Road, Willis, Texas, attended a gambling event near Willis. He reportedly won during the event and then traveled to the location with a friend where they played pool with other associates. Approximately 10 p.m., vehicles' lights were observed approaching, and a number of male suspects began yelling outside and demanding entry, at which time several shots were fired into the home through a closed door and window, striking John. The suspects then entered the home, where they searched and removed cash. The suspects fled in at least 2 vehicles. And it didn't actually say who the people, who did the people in the house identify? Like, did they know these people? Did they see who it was? There had to have been some information that was there. They just hadn't reported it.
Might have been the guys they won money from in the card game.
Right? You never know. Showing back up to take their money back.
Yeah, they would know where their money went.
Here's my Pepsi shout out. No royalties, guys.
Real quick, back to Kucinich. Yeah, I thought I recognized the name. Yeah. Later, he became a member of the House of Representatives, member of Congress, and twice in 2004 and 2008, he ran for president on Democrat ticket.
Really?
Yeah.
That's it. Well, it just
I
shows you.
recognized it. That's why I knew the pronunciation so well. Because he ran for president.
Well, and it shows you how long these people are able to continue their dastardly stuff and run our country.
When he lost to the Vinovich or whatever his name is, or the other guy.
Well, and it doesn't shock me.
Came back and still, he had following in Ohio.
I started getting my own kinds of like rhetoric from the Conservative Party. I was actually happy to see that they mailed both my mother's and my information in one envelope instead of sending 2 envelopes for this signature that they wanted, and then 1 envelope to mail it both back. But here we are in 2026, and we read the 2016 stuff from that old guy a couple weeks ago. But this one, the Transparency Act, requires the independent state auditor to conduct performance and financial audits and new taxes to identify potential savings from addressing waste and fraud, requires the results to be posted publicly and in the voter information guide so voters know what we're getting and can hold politicians accountable. Ha ha, yeah, right. Requires new taxes to comply with our state spending limits so that any excess revenues get refunded to taxpayers, not handed to the special interests. Why are we still dealing with the same stuff, knowing year after year and decade after decade that the same people who continue to run our country are the ones that are running us into debt and into ground? I don't know. March 23rd, 2001, 20-year-old Juan Carlos Luna Perez, 5,000 block of Sorters McClellan Road, Porter, Texas. March 20th, 2001, the Luna Perez illegally entered the U.S. with 30 other people who were being kept at a residence until he began complaining of being ill. Suspect claimed he was taking Luna Perez to the hospital, and they got into a red Chevy Blazer S10, and Luna Perez was never seen again until his body was discovered. He had been beaten to death. So obviously this is some human trafficking that we have going on here.
Wow.
Oh, well, we are down to our last minute and 20 seconds, so I don't know that I'm going to climb into Jack's book, but what we're going to be talking about next week is direct conversations. So what you're seeing right here, right now, is Dennis's book addressing making that phone call to Jack, because it says, one day I felt like calling Jack and just asking him, are you the Zodiac? I thought about it for a while. I figured, what the hell? I wasn't getting anywhere from the San Francisco police. I wanted to see what he would say, and if he did admit it, how much would he tell me? So I called him up, and this was our conversation. So next week we're going to be picking up on these conversations and discussing what is in Dennis's book that I have transcribed for us to go over next week. Is there anything else you would like to add at this point?
Yes, we also need to go back to Black Dahlia for a minute next week.
Well, not next week, because what I have planned right now, I'm down to probably the last few weeks of this presentation. Then we can backtrack to those items. I want to kind of stay in rhythm right now, because we're going to go through some very sketchy stuff on through the 9/11 attacks and on into Tom Boyd's letters, on into the Tim Miller letter. And then I feel like once we get that out of the way, we can backtrack all we want to anything else, because we have plenty of time to do so.
Word. Okay. Perfect.
All right, you guys, everybody have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next Friday. Thank you, Nolan.
See you next Friday.